Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday evening. We are here to explore Argentina. I am Molly Moran. I'm the owner of Table Wine, and this is our first wine class of 2020. So, hi. I don't know. I didn't necessarily think that we'd still be doing virtual classes in January of 2020, but we are, and I'm really glad that you're all here. So thank you for being here. If you are joining us live, I have two small favors to ask. One, would you fill out the poll because there are far more of you watching than there are answers. So if you could fill out that poll, that would help me get a sense of what kinds of experience you have with Argentine wine. So please do that. It's 2 questions. It'll take you all of 12 seconds. And then the question on the table to open it up for chat is if you could go safely anywhere in the world on an all expenses trip for wine tasting, where in the world would you want to go? I asked this question for 2 reasons. One, well, actually, I guess 3. One, just general curiosity. I'm always curious to see kind of like where people are drawn to. It helps generate class ideas. So thanks. It's good for me to see what people like. So far, we've got visit to France on the table, starting in Paris and working his way around Portugal, Willamette Valley, lots of Italy, a multi-country trip of Italy, France, Spain, and Portugal, which sounds amazing. So again, please, if you're here watching live, please throw out some answers because I am curious. And my final answer, or my final reason for asking that question is that if you are really like near and dear to the table wine community, you may have noticed that I didn't have many events scheduled for the end of January, beginning of February. And then suddenly I had, I have class next week and another class in early February. And maybe you just thought like, whatever, I didn't notice, or, oh, like, yeah, okay, I guess I did. The reason for that is that I was supposed to be in France next week. So I'm feeling a little sad, not just a little sad, I'm feeling a lot sad. My trip has gotten postponed and I will get to go in September. So that part is good. But it's sad that Omicron kept us home. So we're going to travel vicariously through wine, right? So I'm going to put a smile on my face and buck up and do it. But yeah, I thought I'd be teaching this class like right on the cusp of my trip. And instead I'm like, oh, no, hunkering down. Here I am. So, we got to vote for New Zealand on the table as to where to go. See, that's smart. 'Cause that's like really far. Like you all, I love you all, but like you can get yourselves to Italy. That's doable. New Zealand's far. I'd much rather have somebody pay that plane ticket. As far as the experience with Argentine wine, it looks like a fair number of you drink wine from Argentina sometimes, like a few times a year. There's someone who's never had it or not sure that they've ever had one, which is very exciting for me. And then a number of you have had wines other than Malbec. So that is also good for me to know because that kind of is like the hallmark of Argentine wine. So if you don't already have wine in your glass and you want wine in your glass, we're going to start with the white. We're going to start with the Tarantas. I'm going to give us a little history and fundamentals of the wine in Argentina. So we're not ready to talk about the wine yet, but I understand that you might want to drink. So have one if that's what you want to do. And with that, we're going to dive in. So, and I'm sorry. No, we're not going to dive in. I'm going to keep talking for a second. If you haven't kind of caught on already and you are watching live, the chat is our way of communicating. So I don't use Zoom. I want you all to be able to have mouths full of food or be in your PJs or have side convos with your friends and whatever. I don't want to deal with muting. I don't want to deal with all the Zoom stuff. I figure you all probably, many of you are on Zoom a lot. And so this is your time to kind of hang out. But I do like chatting, so please do engage through that. So if you have questions as we're going through the information, feel free to chat. And there'll be times when I specifically ask questions and kind of wait for your answers. So now we can jump in. So Um, Fundamental information about Argentina and wine. Um, so Argentina is an interesting case. So they, like a lot of countries, have a DOC system where wines have to be from a specific place. The grapes have to be grown in that place, and there's a controlling body that says like how much the of the wines can be certain grapes and things of that sort. That's pretty common. In France, it's called the AOC. In Italy, it's the DOC and DOCG. The weird part about Argentina is they've had this system in place for a long time, and most regions don't really care about it, and they don't really use it. So there are only two DOCs in all of Argentina, and a lot of wineries within those DOCs don't use it. So they don't really seem to care that much about it. It's not the thing that drives them, which I find very interesting because it is important to a lot of other wine countries in terms of that, like that place. Naming that place is very important. But in Argentina, they go with the GI. So it is still naming a place. It is still saying like it comes from this region. They just are larger regions, and there's a little less bureaucracy around what qualifies as that region. So I just thought that was an interesting note. So there are about 95 of those, almost 100 of those GIs, with the largest one being Mendoza. You'll see Mendoza on a lot of wine labels, and a lot of wine lists. If you are out and you see, Argentina, it's almost invariably from Mendoza. Argentina produces the fifth most wine in the world. France and Italy are always the top two. They go back and forth between who produces the most. Then Spain, then us. And then there's this like really noticeable drop off. So Argentina's down with Australia and South Africa, and they're at about a quarter of how much wine Italy produces or France produces. So they are fifth, but it's a very large. The top four are much larger. And I should say, actually, the top three are much larger. And then we're kind of in the middle, and then them. And in terms of what we import into the US, they are the sixth most imported country into the US. So that's also pretty remarkable for such a small country. Red wine is by far the most dominant. If you don't already know that, I'm going to probably say it a lot of times tonight, but it is a Malbec. It is a Malbec game in Argentina, and so red wine is by far the most popular. There's a small amount of white wine, and then in terms of like rosé or bubbles or pet nats, things of that sort, they're really not on the radar at all. Like we have gotten the occasional rosé out of Argentina, but there's not nearly the amount of that as you see from lots of other places. And then the other thing of note, if you don't know much about Argentina, it is very dry. It's a super arid climate. There are parts of Argentina that are low in elevation, kind of in the far south. There are parts that are close to the coast, and so those are lower in elevation. But generally speaking, it's all about altitude. It's all about these mountains, right? It's all about the Andes. It's all about how high up the vineyards are. And if some of you have joined me in the past for Malbec specific class, it's a very interesting thing for me to try to teach Malbec separate from just talking about Argentina, right? Like to talk about other countries that make Malbec. And then it's also interesting for me to try to teach Argentina without it just being the Malbec show, because they are so synonymous and they are so linked to one another. But one of the reasons I bring that up right now is that with Malbec, in Argentina, you can really taste the difference at these different altitudes, and you can really see and get pretty geeky and learn a lot by just noticing where the vineyards are, how high up they are. So we can talk about them more when we get to the Malbec, but it's worth noting that just like everything here, it's all about the altitude. The history of wine in Argentina is very similar to that of much of the New World. It was brought here or brought there by Europeans. It was brought by Spanish conquistadors in the mid 16th century. Then, of course, the Catholic Church kind of kept it going, right? So Jesuit missionaries, they were really the ones who figured out how to grow grapes in such a dry, high place, because Argentina is very different from Europe, right? The terrain and the climate is not that, like, it's somewhat similar in the aridness. It is similar to Portugal and Spain, but the mountains are very high, very steep. And so the Jesuits really kind of took care of the grapes and were able to see what grew well there and how to do that. So they really grew the grapes for hundreds of years. In the early 19th century, European immigrants were coming from all over Europe to Argentina. There's a lot of Eastern Europe, but then also Germany and then also Italy. And so they brought a wide variety of grapes from their home countries to grow there. Argentina struggled. It really, really struggled. I could talk more about it for the I don't know, to keep the focus on wine and not to get too deep into politics and history. Just know that Argentina's 20th century was rough. I think that's the easiest way to say it. My aunt, I posted on social media about, like, what do you think of when you think of Argentina? Malbec, right? And my aunt said Evita. I kind of was like, oh, come on. But then kind of revisiting this history and getting ready, I was like, right. Like, Juan Perón is a very important figure. And kind of leading to the economic struggles of Argentina. So they struggled until the 1980s. We'll talk about it more, but in the 80s, that's when wineries started to play around with Malbec, started to grow it a little bit more seriously, started to bottle it. And lo and behold, it turned out that, like, people around the world wanted to buy it. And by the turn of this century, their wine industry totally exploded, and it has really helped their economy, generally speaking. So it's amazing when you learn, if you get into South American history, it's amazing what wine export will do for the economy of these countries, like Chile, like Uruguay, like Argentina. It really can make a wild difference. Here's a map for y'all to give you a sense of where we are. If anybody has any questions as I'm going through this kind of fundamental information, please do let me know. So we can come back to this map if anybody wants to. We're really going to spend a lot of time in Mendoza, that kind of like central region. But we're going to start in the north. So does anybody have any questions? Oh, sorry. One more. Varietals, just so that you kind of know, get your sense of, or get your bearings a bit. The white grapes, there are a little bit of other things grown there, but it's really a grape called Torontes, which is where we're going to start, and then Chardonnay. And then reds, there is a variety, but it is primarily Malbec and Cab. They make up almost 60% of the reds, just those two grapes. And then other Bordeaux varietals, Merlot, Petit Verdot, and Cab Franc are the other ones that you'll kind of see. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. All right. Questions about fundamental stuff? No? All right, y'all. Let's get to drinking. If you didn't already start, you should pour yourselves some of the Torontes so that you can taste it along with us. So here's what you want to know about Torontes. Because I assume of the three wines that we are tasting tonight, it's probably the least familiar, I would assume. It's not really, I don't think it's really anybody's go-to. Tell me if it's your go-to. I would love to know that, but I don't think it's anybody's go-to. So, pardon me. Torontes is a white that has medium acidity. It is on the drier side, but it's not totally bone dry, and kind of a medium light body. It kind of depends on the specific wine, but that's kind of the general characteristics of Torontes. It is known for citrus notes. Lime, lemon, orange, grapefruit, all of the above are fair game. And then floral notes, both on the nose and on the palate. I'm so sorry about this. Tarantes is almost all of it. All of the world's Tarantes is almost all of it is grown in Argentina. There is a tiny little bit grown in Chile, but nobody else is growing it. So while Malbec is kind of the star of the show, Tarantes is the thing that is unique to Argentina. So that's kind of I think that that's kind of cool. I think it's worth worth shining the light on it for a minute or five. So feel free to start tasting and let me know what y'all think. Tarantes is actually, there are 3 different Tarantes varietals. They kind of all fall into the name, just are called Tarantes. But there are 3 different varietals, and it is a hybrid grape of a red grape and then Muscat of Alexandria. So that floral nose is something that's very common. There are like a million different Muscats. So it's very common with a wine that's made from Muscat or Moscato to smell like flowers. So here we are, smelling flowers. I get floral on the nose, but also like a dusty note. Very floral tasting notes. I really like it, kind of like a lighter Riesling. We really like it. So interesting that the smell is different from the taste, right? I think there's something, and maybe this is, you guys tell me, but when I smell a wine that smells like this, because I associate this smell with Muscat and Gewürztraminer and wines like that, I just expect it to be sweet, right? Like I just expect there to be like very ripe peach, chin dripping kind of fruit notes on it. And then it's like, oh, it's kind of salty and kind of limey. And it's like, I think at one point I've referred to this wine as tasting like a margarita, and I'm going to stand by that. That's like lime and salt. I will say, if you're tasting it at home and you don't like it, that's fair. It is polarizing. Floral wines are, I feel like floral and that umbrella of aromas and flavors is a very polarizing thing. People either gravitate towards it or really don't like it. So please feel free to add to the chat that it's not for you, because I'm here for that. Steph is asking about food pairing ideas. So something this aromatic is really phenomenal with equally aromatic food. So immediately my mind goes to India and Thailand. So really kind of like, I'm not going to say literally any food from an Indian restaurant or like any food ever that has Indian spices, but a lot of different things. I mean, a lot of different dishes that are kind of in that vein are going to be great with this. Perhaps not something super spicy, but something that's more spiced, if that makes sense, if that distinction makes sense. Because of that floral note, I just adore Tarantes with jasmine rice. I just think it's like, it's just like jasmine on jasmine, and it's really lovely. But then also there's this herbaceousness, right? This lime and salt that to me says Thailand, that's like shrimp. And I'm not a cilantro person, but a lot of cilantro, Thai basil, lime, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where the food pairing goes. You can definitely do it with let's see what else, like chicken, even turkey. You could do it with that. It's not in my there are some cheeses that people suggest with Tarantes, but I really just don't feel like it's a cheese wine. I just feel like that's like not in its role, right? I just don't think that that's where it belongs. Catherine is saying little flat tasting, so savory. Interesting. Not sure what you mean by flat tasting. I feel like it's quite lively. It's not super, super high acid. There is a little bit of weight to it. I don't know if that's kind of where we're going in that direction, but I do feel like that's there. Maybe that helps, Catherine. The taste really does go from like biting a flower to drinking a margarita. Like really, right? It does. It's kind of remarkable. On the map earlier, Salta is way up in the north. It's the northernmost area of Argentina, wine regions. And this is a picture of Salta. It is, I'm going to say it's one of the highest altitude wine growing regions in the world. It feels like every time I do a place that is like known for its altitude, they claim that they are the highest altitude place. So I'm just gonna say one of, but it is very, very high altitude. I There's something that just happens in my mind when I see pictures of Argentina where I'm like, I'm sorry, there are cacti. There are cacti next to vines, and like I don't understand what's happening. Like, I'm just like, what are you talking about? The desert thing. Having been to Spain, having been to Portugal, like seeing kind of, very arid mountains with vines on them, it still kind of blows my mind when I see these pictures. So there you go. This is Salta. This is where almost all of the world's Torontos comes from. There are parts, it does grow in Mendoza and it does grow further south, but it's really all about Salta. Other thoughts, questions about this? You're not going to find it everywhere. It's not going to be, I mean, I think you guys already know that, right? Because you haven't seen it everywhere. I did it for Wine Club a few months ago. And kind of felt like I was taking a risk with that, quite honestly, because I've taught Argentina class. It's been a few years, actually. It's been quite a while since I taught it. But then I remembered the reaction to Toronto's was not nearly as positive as all of yours. So I'm very happy to see that. But I was nervous. But then the response from Wine Club members was positive. So, maybe tastes are changing. So this is Becky says they love it. Thank you. I'm so glad to see that. Steph, I think it's wonderful and it's seasonally versatile. I agree with you, Steph. Earlier, Carol said she's adding it to her white wine list to buy. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that's just like a winter white kind of thing. And then, but it's also, I think it's great in the summertime, right? I feel like if you lean in, and like maybe that's part of the food thing, to go back to that, right? Like at this time of year, I would probably have it with like paneer tikka masala, right? Or like, some sort of like creamier, richer Indian dish. And then in the summer, I would have it with like, I don't know, Thai ceviche kind of thing. So that can also play into that. Alexis asks, is this a grape that if we see it, we should try it, or better to get to know the region winemakers first? That's a really great question. AKA, is there bad Torontos? Yes. So there is definitely bad Torontos. Like there's bad everything, right? There's a bad version of every grape out there. When it is bad, the acid is low, and the floral thing gets soapy. And I am someone who likes floral wines, but the low acidity gets just kind of flabby, and it's not that interesting. So what I would say is look for Salta. So if you have the wine that I'm drinking, the El Porvenir, I will hold this up here. So Valle de Cafayete is the more specific place, but Salta is the region. And so I would say look for Salta. It's very high altitude. Therefore, the grapes don't get as ripe. Therefore, the wines have more acidity. So I would say that you don't have to necessarily seek out winemakers. I think it could be kind of cool to try other Torontos. But like, I mean, honestly, I don't know if there's another one available from all of the distributors that I work with. There might be like one or two others. It's very rarely seen. So it doesn't, it just doesn't have a following. And because of where we're going to end, Argentine winemakers know how their bread is buttered, and so they do that. So, but I'm glad, and I will hit me up if you ever want me to check on more Torontos for you. I'm happy to do that. And I know at least Douglas is in Chicago. Folks who are in other places, or if you, I don't know, travel. Do people travel? If you go somewhere, look around, see if there's other Torontos around. Who knows what you might find. Side note, I would really like there to be like a natural wine, I don't know, push in Argentina, and I would really like to get to taste like a skin contact Torontos. I'd be very curious to see what happens. Just throwing that out there. None of you are winemakers in Argentina, so you can't help me on that, but just throwing that out there. Questions before we leave our white for the evening? I'm really glad that so many of you seem to enjoy it. I'm really glad that it resonated with a lot of you. That's very unexpected and very cool. So I'm glad to hear it. Okay. We can always come back if you think of something. Okay, we are going to move to Cab. So again, if you're tasting the wines that I sent out, it's the Ernesto Catena Animal Cab that we'll be tasting. And if you're not tasting our wines, hopefully you got yourself an Argentine Cab, or maybe you're not drinking and you're just listening and learning that way. So I got to be honest, as I was putting notes together and I was thinking about like laying out the general profile of Cab, I was like, do I really need to do that for people? And then I was like, look, you follow the same format for every grape so that everybody gets the same information, because maybe somebody doesn't know Cabernet Sauvignon. So here we go, everybody. The profile of Cab, this is just a broad generalization about Cab. Medium acid, medium high tannins. Those are the things that dry your mouth out, the cheeks or the tongue. And then full body. That's Cab in a nutshell. It's big in body, pretty big in tannin, and then not so big in acid. In Argentina specifically, it's known for more black fruit flavors. So think black plum, blackberry, black cherry, black currant, all of those kinds of things. Spice, that can be like peppercorn, that could be bell pepper, like that kind of spice thing to it. And then oak notes, and that can either taste or smell like actual oak, cedar kind of things, or it can it also encompasses like chocolate and vanilla and baking spices, all of those kinds of things that come to a wine because of how it's aged in oak fall under the bucket of oak notes. Cab is the second most widely planted grape in Argentina. It was for a long time the primary red grape in Argentina. Winemakers were really trying to make Cab happen. There are food pairing ideas there. The main one being carne asada or anything with black beans. That's going to be kind of your happy place from a food pairing perspective with Argentine Cab. So in all of Europe, but particularly in France, there's a really common practice of sending the younger generation off to learn to make wine not on the family's property. And I'll pause to say, please feel free to drink as I'm explaining all of this, but I do think that it's pretty interesting because it explains kind of why it was the Cab show and why it became the Malbec show. So, but feel free to drink. So, that's pretty common practice. And because of all of that immigration that was happening in the 19th and 20th century from Europe, there was a fair number of there was an interest in wine in general in Argentina, right? Because it had a very big European population. And so people wanted wine, and the kind of wine that people want, whether they come from countries that make wine or not, there's still a love of French wine. There's still an interest in French wine. And so a lot of French families sent their younger generations to Argentina to learn winemaking there. So basically, you go figure out how to grow grapes, not using the family's precious grapes. You go over there where we think less of those wines, but we'll let you learn the ropes there. This is still true today. So there are like, this is still how it works. If you're the second child in a Spanish family, you might learn winemaking in Australia rather than on the family's property. That's still pretty normal. So, so there was this big connection with wineries in France, and specifically wineries in Bordeaux. And so they brought the Bordeaux varietals, and they brought Merlot, and they brought Cab, and they were like, which one's going to win? Who's it going to be? It's the Merlot and Cab like showdown. And for a while, Cab seemed to be winning. So that is why there is so much Cabernet in Argentina. So now that you know all that, tell me what you think of this wine. This is from Ernesto Catena. And it is certified organic, which I don't always mention, but he really cares deeply about that. And so I thought I'd give him a shout out in that regard. Alexis tells me that my story about Bordeaux families was interesting, and I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. Barb says the wine is very silky feeling. Okay, so right. Okay, so Steph says the wine is great and the label is beautiful. Okay, everybody, take a deep breath and get ready for what I think is like just the most like almost ridiculous winery because of how beautiful it is. What? Okay, the winery itself might not be the most beautiful winery, but like, what the hell? That's where the winery is. Like, hello. Hello, mountains. Just, I am stunned. I am stunned by that. I can't handle it. I texted my husband. It's just like, holy crap, this is a real place. Now I can make myself big again. Although, don't you just want to look at those pretty mountains? I just want to look at them so much. Okay, back to the wine. It has a delicate mouthfeel. It kind of dissipates on the front of your tongue. Tannins are there, but it just kind of floats on the front. Ooh, I like this. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it's like, there are some cabs that I think are velvety, like that are so ripe that they're just kind of like very like plush. I feel like this is, Barb used the word silky, and I feel like it's like just, it's there, right? It's not quite to the like overwhelming, and not that velvety is a bad word at all. I think some people are very much drawn to the word velvety, which is why I use it. But there's something very smooth, right? I think some of you have hit on that. Carol's saying this wine is delicious with Hook's 5-year and some fig jam. I 100% understand that. Cab and aged cheddar are just so great together. And I do think the black fruit on this cab with fig just is a match made in heaven. That's beautiful. One of the reasons that I picked this specific cab is because I do think that it is very pure fruit. I think that you get to taste the cab a lot more than the oak. And I think that often in New World Cabernets, they get so bogged down in the oak aging and all of those notes that I realize I'm making that face, and that's not fair because some of you might love that. And you should. Like, if you love it, you love it. But it can be nice to taste a wine that is so often produced in that one way, to get to taste it in its like pure fruit form. And I don't mean to say that this wine is fruit forward, but this is just, I don't know, there's something just a little like cleaner about this wine to me, that it just tastes kind of like this is the wine. For what that's worth. So keep telling me things that you think about this wine. Go for it. I want to hear it all. It's so great. I like New World, obviously, but it's so nice to have a more delicate, pure form. Yeah. And I think that's what I love about it. It tastes New World, right? It's fruit. There's not like, you're not sitting here thinking like, oh, is this from Bordeaux? What's happening? Why is it so savory? Right? Like, it's New World. It's a New World wine. It just is a little less extracted. I mean, It's the second of our three wines, right? It's at 13.5% alcohol. It's very rare that I would put Cab not as the last wine because, and particularly a New World Cab, because they're usually like, 14.5% and they're big in tannin and they're big in fruit and they're just like these big, big wines. And this is a little bit more subdued, which I think is cool. I like it. And I also think that you do get to taste Argentina. I think you get to taste what it is that's different about their cab than our cab, right? I think we have time for this story. So the Catena family, I don't know if y'all know Catena, the name, but the Catena family is very important in the Argentine wine world, and arguably very important in the wine world at all. They are the kind of, I don't know, top three wineries in Argentina in terms of production, points, world recognition, that kind of stuff. When I have taught this class in the past, I have included a Catena wine. If we had more than three, I would have absolutely 100% included one. It's not that I don't highly regard their wines. There just wasn't space in tonight's lineup for them. And so I'm just going to tell the story briefly. So Catena is a very big deal. Ernesto is part of the family, but he is not part of the winery. So Ernesto is like basically across the street from his family's winery. His family's winery is also gorgeous and also sits at the foothills of the Andes and looks decently similar to what he created for himself. But Ernesto is a hippie, an artist. The label, I don't know if he designed the label or not, but somebody commented on the label before. It's super beautiful. And it's, Ernesto's like eye to that kind of stuff. And he is basically like, I want to be organic and I want to be sustainable and I want to not do that. Like he's like, I don't want to do the stuffy version. I want to do the freer version of stuff. So that's the Ernesto Catena story. I think it's pretty cool. It can be cool to taste his wines with I think it's his sister. It might be his cousin, who now runs the Catena family winery, but it can just be kind of cool to taste them side by side. So for what that's worth. Back to the wine. Becky says we like that it's not as oaky as some cabs. It's a nice change. I agree. And that is like what I like about it. And I will say that with Argentine cabs, you will find ones that go for oak the way that California does, but there are a lot more I would say there's like a nicer balance in Argentine cabs. Because even though it's like the second most highly produced grape, it's so much less produced than the highest produced grape that the people who are making it are doing it for a reason. And they're trying to, I don't know, I guess I'd say like it's a little bit of a passion project, right? They know that Cabernet is going to sell. Cabernet, you put that on a wine label and people buy it. But Argentine Cab, that's not exactly like jumping off the shelf. It's not like something that people are like, where's your Argentina Cabernet section, right? Like, so I trust winemakers who are doing it. I like to try them out. Other thoughts, questions? Did anybody not like it? Was anybody not grooving on it? It's okay. I'm not Ernesto Catena. You can tell me. Okay. Well then. Catherine grooved. Great. I love it. I grooved too. I grooved more than I thought I would. For those of you who know my personal taste, Cab is not my personal taste. And so when I teach it, I'm always like, okay, and then there's going to be a bottle of cab at the house. And they're like, okay, what are we going to do? And then I'm drinking this and I'm like, well, that's going to be delicious. And I look forward to more of it. So great. Okay, guys, the time has come. It's time to talk about Malbec. Let's do it. So if you are, I think somebody said that they didn't think they'd ever had Argentine wine. Yeah. And a few people, TBD on whether or not they've ever had other wines from Argentina that aren't Malbec. But either way, somebody out here tonight doesn't think they've ever had Argentine wine, which means they've never had Argentine Malbec. So here we go, guys. So the profile on Malbec from Argentina, pretty medium, medium acidity, medium tannins, medium to full body. Technically full body, kind of depends on the region. So it's medium full. That's kind of its place. The thing that it is known for, pardon me, is a wide variety of fruit flavors and aromas. So you all might smell and taste different things. That doesn't mean that every single Malbec that you get from Argentina is going to have all of these fruit flavors. It just means that some lean more towards black fruit, more towards purple fruit, more towards red fruit. So you can have, raspberry and purple plum, or plum. You can have a really wide variety of fruits, and oak notes. It's not always true. It's not always true that they lean towards that, but it's common enough that it's worth mentioning. So again, that could show up as chocolate. That could show up as vanilla. When I say chocolate, I don't mean sweet. I mean, it might even taste like milk chocolate, but not in a sweet way, which is a very challenging thing for folks to kind of separate those two ideas, but it can be done. About half of the grapes that are grown in the whole country are Malbec. It is that important. So it's about 45%, with Cab being the next at about 14%. So it is when I say it's a Malbec show, I really mean it's a Malbec show. Food pairing there depends on the wine, because the lusher, fruitier styles, the really big fruit forward ones, are great with they can be great with like kind of spicier fare. The slightly lighter ones might be better with leaner meat. But then they are all generally just delicious with blue cheese. So I know Carol had Hook's 5-year cheddar, and it'll be nice with the cheddar, but it's also, if anybody has blue cheese happening, you should enjoy it with your Malbec because it will be delicious. So Steph has blue cheese, then you should have it with this because it's made for that. Do it. So that is pretty lip smacking delicious, I think. So this is on the front label, you'll see, if you are drinking, I should back up and say, if you are drinking the reunion that I sent out, and that we're selling at the shop for this class, if you're drinking that specific wine, it says Mendoza on the front, but then on the back, if you start reading a bit more about the wine, it is from the Valle de Uco, or the Uco Valley. I don't fully understand why they don't put that GI on here. In reading about this specific wine, it does come from a couple different vineyards, but they are all within the Valle de Uco. They could absolutely 100% put Valle de Uco on the label, but chose to put Mendoza. So that's another part of that geographical thing that I was talking about at the beginning that can be a little challenging with Argentine wine, because so many of them are going to say Mendoza on them, right? Our Cab, I believe, also says Mendoza on it. Yep, it says Mendoza. And it doesn't necessarily tell you much more than that. So it can be hard because Mendoza is, that's like when a wine just says California on it. It's a big region and it varies in altitude dramatically. So it can be a little challenging, but they know what they're doing in terms of marketing. So I'm not going to get too upset with them. So Alexa says, I'm having trouble picking up on specific tasting notes, getting black fruit, blue fruit, spice notes, etc., but can't pick out specifics. The tannins are higher than I was expecting to. Are other folks running into that? Are other folks kind of having difficulty kind of discerning? Specific things? Because I'm happy to kind of tell you what I'm tasting, but I don't want to plant seeds before people have had a chance to speak their minds. Tannins do get in the way. Oh, okay. If you feel like the tannins are getting in your way of appreciating the wine or tasting things, I would definitely suggest either decanting this bottle, so just pouring it into something else. If you have an aerator, which I know some folks love, you could use your aerator now, or you could just pour yourself some in a glass and kind of let the glass sit there and hang out. If the tannins are too much, which is totally fair, give the wine some air and let it breathe and see what you all think later. And that can be, half an hour from now, an hour from now, and see what you think. We won't all be together, but you can tell me later. Okay, well, nobody's like kind of immediately jumping on the train of what they're smelling and tasting. So Alexis is saying blueberry and chocolate. Like, so I definitely, I feel like I smell very ripe cherry, almost chocolate covered cherry, but again, not in a sweet way. And that might be confusing, but I just mean more like I can smell cherry and I can smell chocolate. And so I'm thinking of those two things together. I do agree with the blueberry. I think there's like a tart blueberry thing going on. Yeah. I do think that there's how do I want to describe it? Like my mind immediately said cinnamon, but it's not cinnamon, but there's like a spice element here. Actually might say cinnamon, like a cinnamon bark kind of thing happening on the finish as well. I also love that Alexis said that she aggressively swirled her glass. Aggressively swirl as aggressively as you damn well please. It's a good way to go. What are others thinking? Folks are quiet on this wine, which is not what I was expecting, but that is okay. We think it smelled a little funky. We do like it. Can taste and smell the chocolate. Cool. Okay. It smelled a little funky. Curious. I'm going to pour myself a little more and see what we got going on there. I like this one too. 3 for 3. Yay. Carol likes Argentina. We like it better after aggressively swirling. Great. Swirl away, everybody. The more it opens, the more I like it. Awesome. Perfect. So you can tell from the label, they do intend this to be a food wine. They do intend this to be served at the dinner table, sitting around and kind of sharing it. So with that kind of in my mind, I guess I can see the logic in having a wine that opens up. I often think of those kinds of wines as wines that are great right off the bat, but I can see the logic in like, we are going to have red meat. We live in Argentina, and so invariably we're going to have beef. We're going to eat a nice long meal together as a family. And so it's going to take, it's going to take a little while. We're not Spanish per se, but we like our long meals. And so we want a wine that's going to kind of last us the whole time. So I guess that could be kind of the thinking in the winemaking there in terms of like what style they're going for. So y'all can just swirl aggressively and be happy that way. One thing that I really like about this wine and why I picked it. So I struggle with Malbec because people want it and they just want to drink any Malbec. They don't really care. And that's good in a way because it's like, okay, well, I have I have flexibility, right? I know that it's a thing that is of interest of people. And I taste so many bad ones. I taste so many boring ones. I won't even say bad ones, just boring. Just kind of like, why? What is the point of this wine? And so then when I find a Malbec that has something interesting about it, that's particularly well balanced, that has tannin and some structure to it and some acidity, I go after that because there's just so much gloppy blueberry jam. And I am going to talk shit on it and I'm not going to feel bad about it because I just think that like I think there's just a lot of crap Malbec. And so, earlier when we were talking about Torontes, Alexis asked, should she go out and try to explore Torontes? And I was like, yeah, by all means, go for it. If you can. And I think that Malbec is a place where a lot of people do explore, right? People go to restaurants and they just order the Malbec by the glass. They just go buy whatever, any old Malbec they can find. And I think that Malbec might be a time to pay a little bit more attention. Again, I did a class just about Malbec and the difference in altitude. And so the higher up you go, the more acid you get. And the knock on Malbec is that it's not a very high acid grape. And so you kind of need that altitude to balance it out. So without just teaching Malbec class, I do want to mention kind of the end of the story on the Bordeaux varietals. So you'll remember I said that Cab and Merlot kind of were duking it out, trying to figure out who was going to be the grape. And it seemed like it was going to be Cab. And then some folks from Bordeaux who were working at Norton Winery, which is another big named winery in Mendoza, found some, or I'm sorry, he's not from Bordeaux. He's from here. His name is Paul Hobbs. He was working at Norton. He found some Malbec vines that were growing that really had just been completely forgotten about. Nobody gave a hoot about what happened to those grapes. And Paul was like, hey, can I play around with these and see if I can get something good out of it? And the winemaker, he was just like an assistant. The winemaker was like, sure, who cares? Go ahead and try. Malbec in France is known as Côte, C-O-T. It's not very awesome. It's an incredibly different wine. Now there's really good Malbec in France, but it's the one time where I'm going to say nuh-uh, the French version was not good. Paul played around with it. He figured out that the altitude could substitute for cooler nights. And there we go. Here we're going to get this really great version. And then he really people were just like, whoa, what is happening? This wine is amazing. And so in the 80s, that's when some wineries started to pay more attention to Malbec. And then they realized this is something special. Our Malbec is better than French Malbec. And there's very little French Malbec. And so they were like, we've got something that most of the world doesn't know what it is. And anyone who's kind of my age or older might remember the Australian Shiraz boom. And so Argentine Malbec came in right on the heels of that, right? Where people liked a big wine, people liked fruit, people liked booze. And here comes Malbec. And bam, it just hit. It really, really hit in a very major way. And it continues to do so. It's kind of like New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. It's like this trend that you kind of expect to go away. And in some ways it's going away, but plenty of people, this is just their default, right? This is just what they always want, which is great. So that's the the Malbec story. So now it reigns supreme. It's done so well that French winemakers have changed how they make Malbec. They put Malbec on their label instead of naming they'll still put the region, but they'll also say Malbec because they know that Americans like Malbec. So that's kind of fun. And I'm glad to see some of you enjoyed this more than the jammier ones. And that's really, I think, the cool thing. If you like the jammy ones, then you can buy the very inexpensive ones because they're not going to be aged in oak. That's why they're so inexpensive, is they're not aged in oak, and they're going to come from the lower altitudes where the grapes are going to be warmer and riper. So if you like that style, good on you, and like go after it. If you like this style, you can seek out Valle de Uco, you can seek out Luyan de Cuyo, you can like seek out these subregions within Mendoza. You can become like the person who knows the altitude of the vineyards. You could be that person if you wanted to be that person. And just kind of like know that you like, I like high altitude Malbec. These vineyards are somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000, almost 4,100 feet above sea level. So that's pretty high altitude. Alexis and her husband said, I'll be that person at the same time, nerding out over here. I love it. Well, as I said it, I was like, is that weird to say that you could be that person? And I was like, I know that some of you might really love to be that person who like learns the altitude. So go for it. That information exists. Are there any other questions, kind of generally speaking, about Argentina overall, or about any of these wines? Anything that we didn't cover that you want to? We started with a question of travel. And I think one of my most challenging things is when I sent my husband that picture of Ernesto Catena's winery. I am very much drawn to the terrain of Argentina. I've never been there. I don't know if any of you have. It looks just amazing to me. I don't really like red meat, and I don't drink a ton of red wine. And so I want to go. I want to see these vineyards. I think that like getting to the place really helps connect you in a way that, you know, people say, but I don't think you really realize until you do it yourself. But man, oh man, I'm just like, but I don't think I want to do that. I want to see the beautiful mountains. I want to see the vineyards, but I really want to be drinking champagne while I do it. So, I don't know. Woe is me. Alexa said that she typically enjoys single varietal classes most, but this has been wonderful. I really got a sense of the country itself too. Oh, well, that's great. Thank you. It's almost easier to teach a country like this because it's such a one horse. What's the one trick pony? A one trick pony? You know, like it's so all about Malbec that it's like, okay, well then here are the two other things that are worth talking about, right? Here's the other grape and here's the white. And then like it's easier because then sometimes we'll do a region or a country where it's like, Spain, how do I pick the 3 Spanish wines? So, you know, that's just funny. Steph asked if we have any of the Ernesto wines. So Steph, we have a few bottles of the cab. And we have at times carried the Ernesto Animal Malbec. I don't think that I would carry both the cab and the Malbec at the same time, because the labels look identical. And I just fear that people might not buy the wine they think they're buying. Just like not a legitimate concern. I have plenty of wines where the labels look the same, but I think just like for an injury, like we don't carry that many Argentine wines, so I think I'd probably mix it up. And then he has a different Malbec called Padrillos that I can get. So the one that I have on the table, like actually at table wine for tomorrow, is the cab. I can get some Malbecs from him if you ever want. So just let me know. Catherine asked, did the political landscape have anything to do with the wines? So it had to do with how much the the wine industry was struggling. So there was still wine production throughout, basically from the time the conquistadors showed up to today. There's always been wine in Argentina, but sometimes it's just been churches. Sometimes it's just been like for, kind of like at home consumption kind of thing. And in the 20th century political landscape it wasn't just at home consumption, but it was not being exported. And it was really dying as an industry. And without I want to be mindful of time and be mindful of politics. Without World War II and things that happened in Argentina after World War II, wine may have gone a very different route, and it struggled for years because people outside of Argentina didn't want anything to do with Argentine products. But because of the influx of European people after World War II, there was an interest in wine. So that, I guess, is my short-ish answer about the political landscape. And then I'm not going to say that, the whole wine industry of Argentina relies on a white man from the US, but Paul Hobbs did play a very huge role in it when he figured out that Malbec was going to do well. I'd also be very curious to hear that story told from someone who lives in Argentina, because that story has been told to me many times. I've read it many times. I've heard it from lots of different sources, and it always has this kind of like white savior complex thing for me where I'm like, oh, did Paul Hobbs he's the only one? Really? There are no people who are from Argentina who figured this out? I will look into that and get back to you, because I feel like that's worth exploring. Retelling the stories. Whew, ending on a heavy note. Are there other questions, thoughts? Jason's been looking at Airbnbs in Argentina for the last 20 minutes. Well, and the one thing, okay, I know we're running out, we're like over time, but I just wanted to mention the one amazing thing about Argentina is that I think it's only one time zone behind us. So even though the flight is very long and it's very far away from us, you don't have jet lag. It's pretty great. You just get off that plane and you start drinking. That's all I've heard. Everybody tells me that. It's like whoever mentioned New Zealand earlier, it's the polar opposite of going to New Zealand or South Africa. It's like, oh, it's kind of like I'm at home, except I'm in a totally different place. It's amazing. I'm really glad to hear that you learned so much, Becky. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you guys. As I've mentioned a couple of different times, if there are other wines from Argentina that you're interested in that I don't have on the shelf, please drop me an email. I'm happy to get you stuff. And I'll maybe even start carrying them if there's enough interest. So, stay tuned. Thank you guys. Have a lovely evening. Next week, I'm doing a really exciting class about the different kinds of farming practices, about what is sustainable, what is organic, what is natural. It's going to include 4 wines because we just want to make it extra fun. And those wines will be announced tomorrow. So join us if you can next Thursday. And I will see y'all soon. Bye, everybody.